So tonight, you're at a concert. It's a pretty small venue. You're expecting a pretty rambunctious crowd because it's a punk band that is performing. They're the headlining act. But when they come out and start playing, you notice they're pretty different from a lot of other punk bands out there. 3 of the 4 members are all women, and the front woman has a commanding presence that is both really feminine and far more commanding than even lots of male punk singers. This is the band Bikini Kill, who are one of the forefront bands of the Riot Grrrl movement. And I'm going to talk about this movement today and how it got its start and its context within punk music, how it came about, and how it's affected us today. So we can't really talk about a particular movement in punk without talking about punk music's beginnings, so I'm going to start with that. Punk music began in about the 1970s with bands like Iggy and the Stooges, and the Sex Pistols, and the Ramones, and the Clash. They were known for more abrasive music that was not necessarily part of the mainstream, and they didn't necessarily have the same kind of finesse that lots of other bands played with their instruments. But because of that, because you didn't need that sort of finesse and talent, more people were able to do it, and it was much more inclusive than all these other genres of music. According to the book, Anyone Can Do It, Empowerment Tradition and the Punk Underground. And all of this led to a very anti-hierarchical, very inclusive in terms of ideals and even gender, because there were much more women involved in this form of rock music than there were in other forms of rock music. However, eventually, I'm sorry, I reordered my notes. Eventually, it did end up having this hierarchical elitism that other forms of music had. Very macho bands like Black Flag and the Dead Kennedys came around and brought with them more violence and aggressiveness than punk had had in the past. And this often took form in people moshing at shows, which was basically like pushing around, shoving, and people ending up on the ground. Oftentimes fights would break out. And because some of these women that were in there were smaller and not as capable of dealing with themselves in this audience, many of them had to evacuate to the sides of the area and became very marginalized within the scene. Like, a lot of times they were just there with their boyfriends holding their jackets while their boyfriends were in the pit, messing someone up. And it kind of stayed like that for a while until the 80s to early 90s. Around this time, a woman named Kathleen Hanna came into the picture. She was a feminist college student who participated in lots of spoken word and art gallery stuff in order to talk about all of her feminist ideals. But the idea never crossed her mind to join a band until in an interview that she gave with, until she said in an interview that she gave with the movie The Punk Singer, that her friend Kathy Acker asked her, "Why are you doing spoken word? Nobody goes to spoken word shows. You should be in a band where people actually do go see your shows." And so a week after that, she started trying to organize bands. She didn't have an actual band set up that would stick until a friend of hers named Toby Bale asked her to join the band Bikini Kill. And around this time, many other bands were starting to come out that had lots of women in them, like Rapmobile and Heavens to Betsy. And they were all very confrontational and unapologetic about their feminist ideals. And in a similar way that the early days of punk music was very much against the hierarchy of rock music and the music industry and pop culture at the time, these feminists were very much against the hierarchical patriarchy that had grown in punk music. And eventually they decided to hold a meeting to discuss all the sexism and such that was in punk music. And they decided that they wanted to encourage as many girls as they could to join bands and to create fanzines, which were basically handmade magazines that you could write about whatever you want to. Considering punk had a very do-it-yourself ethos, they enjoyed that was a very popular thing within the punk movement. And during one of these meetings, someone was like, I just really want to have a girl riot. And that's where the term Riot Grrrl came from. And this was all according to We Are the Revolution, Riot Grrrl Press, and DIY Self-Publishing, an academic journal that I found while researching. And soon after that, the Riot Grrrl movement quickly spread across the country in various punk scenes. There were chapters that were opened in Washington State and Washington, D.C., where women could come in and discuss their sexual identity, racism, sexual abuse that they may have had, and Riot Grrrl's place in punk music. Kathleen Hanna made it a point to make girls more welcome at punk shows than they had been in the past by formally inviting all of them, please come forward and be in the crowd. And all of these, and what's interesting is all of these ideals within this underground scene eventually made their way to more popular forms of music. Like the Spice Girls eventually started saying things like girl power, which initially was in a Riot Grrrl fanzine. And we even see these forms of feminism cropping up in lots of today's pop artists like Taylor Swift and Beyonce and artists like that. And it continues again through underground music with bands like Sleater-Kinney and the Julie Ruin. And one of the most interesting things, in my opinion, that came out of the Riot Grrrl movement were these girl rock camps that would teach girls how to be in bands and work together and have lots of self-empowerment. But the first one was formed in Portland, Oregon, and we even have one that meets at NCSU every year. And you can find out all of these, and there's a Girls Rock Camp Alliance that you can find out where all of these are. And usually there's at least one in every major geographical point in the US. In conclusion, I'm sorry.
Patrick, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Oh, well,